Good morning, this is BelGeode and welcome to FlightSimCon. This is day one, and as you can see, the crowd is real. Everybody's lining up right now to head in. The doors are just about to open, so we're all going to get our passes and whatnot, and we're going to head inside and have some fun. So, won't you join me as we check out FlightSimCon 2016? It's going to be a beautiful thing.
Good flare. All right.
And I feel her down.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Reverse thrust.
Reverse thrust.
Hey, there's our hotel.
Where is it?
Literally at our 3 o'clock. I'm going to take a screenshot right now.
What the hell are you talking about? All I see is a terminal.
Did you install?
Oh, that's our hotel. That's where we're going to be staying.
Right on top of the terminal. Yes, literally.
Nice.
That is it. Excuse me there, lady. Yes. Okay, you might want to see Avon about that skin complexion there, because, lady, you got issues. Nice boobs. All right.
With the shiny boobs, yeah.
All right, people, I'm out. Going to FlightSimCon. I'm out.
Hey, you want to see guests? I bring you the guests.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to FlightSimCon 2016. This is the first of the 2 days, and as you can see, the museum has been transformed into a veritable cornucopia of developers, sceneries here, aircraft here, various systems. Right there is the gentleman Pete Wright, otherwise known as Froogle, who's currently doing some photo opportunities with a few adoring fans. Flight Sim guy is around here somewhere. I'm still trying to locate him. I have no idea where he went. And Novawing 24, last I saw him, he was out the front of the building taking a break. Suffice to say, there is a lot to see and there is a lot going on. I'm going to try and see if I can capture everything, but to be honest with you, there's really so much to see that I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get it all. But let's walk around and I'll show you some of the stuff that's going on here. As you can see, there is a ton of stuff to do. This place is packed to the gills. It's absolutely incredible stuff going on here. A2A is represented, Orbix, Boston ARTCC, which is VATSIM, they're here. GoFlight, High Fidelity, the makers of Active Sky Next. The list just goes on and on. FlyInside is here. You can see him behind Froogle there. And they've actually got, believe it or not, a working Commodore 64 that is currently running the original flight simulator on there. We're going to take a look at that in a minute here. Right now we're looking at Boston Virtual ARTCC. These guys, all lined up on the computers here, are currently playing air traffic control. Not only that, but if you look, you'll see some of these guys are actually flying. So all of these people that you're seeing at this group of desks here, they're all talking to each other right now. Some of them are air traffic control, others are pilots, and they're all flying around the virtual version of this area. If you take a look, you see someone's in the PMDG 737 there. And we've also got some fighter action here. Active Sky Next, always good. All right, let's see if we can find that Commodore 64. No, you're not imagining things, folks. This is a Commodore 64. This is the kind of computer that actually started me out flight simming. This thing is almost as old as I am, basically, and it still runs. You're probably going to get like half a frame a second, but it still runs, and she runs like a champ, apparently. From my understanding, they replaced the hard drive, but that's been the only modification that was done to this thing. So this is absolutely amazing that this is even here, and it just takes me way back. Now let me just backtrack a little bit to say that day one actually began with our very own Froogle giving a State of the Sim Nation address. My video was not all that great, but the audio came out really cool, so I'm going to put it in here anyway, and that way you can hear what he had to say. And let me tell you, it left us in stitches.
Hello. How you doing? You're good? Alright, so most of you know me from YouTube, so we'll start this off in the YouTube way. Hello you dudes, and welcome to FlightSimCon 2016. My name is Froogle, and let's move on from there. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Froogle, also known as Pete Wright. I host a YouTube channel, pretty popular one, to do with simulation, which is youtube.com/FroogleSim. I like what he did with the stand up if you travel the distance thing, because most of the people that I piss off on my channel live in Europe. So, I spotted DoveTail back there. Alright, we'll be nice, we'll be nice. Anyway, let me move on. Is this even calm down? Okay, State of the Sim Nation. Let me talk about this first of all before we get into it. I did the keynote last year, and last year it was my history in Sim. So how I got here, how I built Froogle Sim, you know, where I came from, who I am, kind of thing. That went pretty well. So Evan reached out to me after the event and said, do you want to do it again? I said, sure, that was a blast, I'll do it again, and then I forgot all about it. January, he messaged me and said, hey Pete, need your bio, need to know what you're speaking about. Now I treat such requests, which are tricky requests, a bit like air traffic control. If you, in air traffic control you have an aircraft, you have a controller. If the controller doesn't speak to the aircraft, after a while the aircraft will simply go away. So I used that principle with Evan, and he said, what's your bio, what are you speaking about? And I ignored him. He didn't go away, he came back a couple of weeks later and said, what are you doing? And I ignored him again, and I seem to remember about a month or 2 months after that, somebody contacted my wife, which is kind of, in the air traffic control thing, is kind of like an FAA investigation to why isn't speaking. On a whim, I said, State of the Sim Nation. I have a weekly news show. Who watches it? Who watches the news show? Cool. I have a weekly news show. I thought, let's do State of the Sim Nation. We can round up the year's key stories and see where we're at. And I thought, that's a great idea. State of the Sim Nation. This is the State of the Sim Nation according to the popular press. We are dead. We don't exist. There is no such thing. We're a bunch of nerds and there are no products for us. Interestingly, looking at the titles of the websites up here that posted this stuff, this one, Channel 9. What went wrong? Is my mic kind of fading out? It is? No, it's not. I'm going to move it anyway.
Starting to launch plane.
Hello? It was working, now it's not. There we go. So this guy's Channel 9. That's a Microsoft website. That's a site owned by Microsoft, right?
Wow.
What went wrong with flight sim genre from the market perspective? Well, you stopped it. Interestingly as well over here, Flight Sim is Dead, that was published just before FSX launched. So that's the general perception of flight simulation from the pundits, silly pundits. Let's look back over the past year. These are the things I'm going to cover in State of the Sim Nation. There has been a lot going on in this past year, which is absolutely amazing. There's a list of companies up there. These are all companies that have had a significant impact, as far as I'm concerned, on the Sim Nation over the past year. The big thing, of course, virtual reality arrived. Who's using VR headsets? Quite a few of you. All right, there will be more of you, I guarantee it. We're going to cover that. The cool thing with virtual reality arriving is it took what is old and made it new again. The state-of-the-art simulation for VR is FSX. Who knew that was going to happen? Next up, X-Plane, the ugly stepsister of simulations, took off. And I mean no disrespect to the X-Plane crowd. I know there are X-Plane developers here, there's some of them back. There you go. I like X-Plane, but it's always been viewed as the ugly stepsister. It really took off this year. We'll cover that. DCS World, continuing the puns, exploded. The combat sim actually completely exploded, and we'll look at why. But more importantly as well is the next one, 3 new sims, or sim-likes. Now I call them sim-likes because they're not hardcore, dedicated, full system simulations in the same vein as FSX and PMDG add-ons for FSX and all that good stuff, but they are sim-likes. They are gateway drugs. Okay. They introduce young people, or not so young people, into simulation and get them going. So obviously, DoveTail Games Flight School. is a gateway drug into simulation. Combat Air Patrol 2 launched this week. Who knew that? Any of you are aware of that? Yeah. 3 people, 4 or 5 people. A new sim came out this week called Combat Air Patrol 2. Sim-like. Look at that. Aerofly, FS2. Who plays that? Who flies that? A couple. More people should do that. But anyway, there's that. We also learned over this past year there are 3 new sims coming. DoveTail Games Flight Simulator is obviously coming. Hopefully soon. Combat Hilo is coming. And this one is a really, really shocker. Who's heard of the Red Bull Air Race game? A few of you. I'm surprised how many of you. There's a AAA racing game called Project Cars. You've heard of that, right? Yeah, which is like a gorgeous, beautiful thing. The team behind Project Cars have made a flight sim. And it's in beta. It went into beta 2 weeks ago. So we're going to cover that as well. And then finally, tons of new mid-range and high-end hardware. I'll cover why that's important when we get to it. And then tons of new aircraft and new scenery, which I'm not going to cover because there was too much. Let's dive straight in. Virtual reality. This is a real thing. This is what Toshiba called, catchy name, Toshiba's head-mounted dome display. The head-mounted dome projection system. And this is from 2006, which is when FSX launched. So at the time that FSX launched, this was the market's view of virtual reality. It cost tens of thousands of dollars. It was aimed at the military. It was aimed at high-end simulation. There was no way you're going to get it to run with FSX. It's just not going to happen. But that was virtual reality back then. Today, VR looks like that, which is of course the Oculus Rift. And the key thing with virtual reality arriving from us as simulation nuts, we all want to do VR, we want to be in our virtual planes, right? So VR is very exciting, but it was not possible until the guy at the bottom right, Dan Church, who made a product called FlyInside FSX, turned up. The reason it was not possible is FSX and Prepared, if you add on Orbex scenery, which is phenomenal, but add on PMDG aircraft, add on Active Sky Next, Rex 4 Texture Direct, all the stuff that I normally fly with, Flight Tampa scenery, a couple of Aerosoft airports, Amsterdam will kill it for sure. Put all that stuff in, your frame rate is about 10. Okay? Yep. You can't do virtual reality, which requires a frame rate of about 90. It just doesn't work. So Dan came up with this thing. I don't think he came up with it, but he came up with a way of implementing it called asynchronous time warp. Those of you who saw my recent VR video already know this, but what it does, in a nutshell, I think, is renders a much larger image than you're looking at. Which means even though the sim is going along at 10 frames per second, you can still move your head and look around, and the VR headset keeps up. What it does is it gives you an incredibly smooth experience, irrespective of the performance of the sim, which is massive. And the best sim for it is FSX, because it's actually faster than Prepared. Prepared looks better, Prepared is more stable, Prepared does some wonderful graphical tricks and has a much better API for developers, but FSX is faster. In particular, FSX Steam Edition, there you go, I do love DoveTail. Okay, X-Plane. It's a cool video here, it's PMDG DC6, but X-Plane took off. It really took off this year because of a crazy number of high-definition airliners or study airliners. The IXCG team are at the back. Hold your hands up. There you go. That's the guy. Him. There have been an incredible number of study aircraft launching for X-Plane, which have really propelled it into the mainstream. The IXCG 737 Classic obviously is a classic and has propelled a lot of people into the sim. The arrival of these guys, PMDG, on the platform, and I said in the video, this aircraft will change X-Plane. What I meant to say was, this aircraft and the circumstances surrounding it will change X-Plane. PMDG arriving on the X-Plane platform means those people who previously also viewed X-Plane as the ugly stepsister will now get it and try it. No, I'm serious. That's not the joke. There's a lot of people who were like, I would never touch X-Plane until PMDG did. Well, now they have. So you're going to get a lot of people coming into the X-Plane community who were never there before. And in addition to PMDG, in addition to IXEG, who's heard of the reality packs? The reality expansion packs, one person? Not very many. Okay, a few of you. The reality expansion packs are these amazing add-ons which take otherwise quite boring Coronado aircraft and make them A2A quality study aircraft. That's incredible, and it only happens in X-Plane. So the arrival of those things is pretty cool. As a result, we're now seeing more and more developers jumping on board with X-Plane, which is great. The other problem with X-Plane that we've always had is it doesn't have good traffic. It doesn't have life in the airports. It doesn't have good weather and all these other cool things which are very mature on FSX and Prepared. Now they're starting to arrive. X-Life brings life into the aircraft, into the airport. It brings in traffic and moving things and makes it feel more real. The real weather connector is interesting. I actually had a dream about this thing last night. I told Megan, my wife, this morning, I dreamed about this stupid thing. I dreamed I was flying and there were no shadows on the clouds. And I'm like, stupid real weather connector. I don't know. It doesn't do that, but anyway. Real weather connector uses an add-on called SkyMax Pro. They're both from X Aviation, and it gives you real weather. Like Active Sky Next kind of weather is what they're aiming for in X-Plane. It's not quite there yet. It's better than it was. But again, this is a shift into X-Plane, and I view X-Plane as, they've rotated and they're climbing out. It's very exciting, and I really do view X-Plane right now as quite possibly the most exciting simulation platform to keep an eye on. What next? Oh, there's some X-Plane stuff. So on the left there, the IXCG 737 Classic. Above it, one of the reality expansion packs for a Coronado, obviously a Cessna, because that's what they do. And then bottom right, Flight Factor 737. Flight Factor, another company, has been for a while making study-level sims for X-Plane, not getting a lot of traction outside of the X-Plane community. Now they hopefully will. Moving on. These guys, who plays DCS, flies DCS, quite a lot. Awesome. DCS World 2.0 really made DCS World explode. Most people don't realize outside of DCS, this platform is home to more study-level military aircraft than any other desktop simulator. Think about that. PMDG level study aircraft. The A-10 is harder to master all the systems than the PMDG 777, I think. We've got now the Huey in there, the Ka-50 Russian Black Shark. We've got the Gazelle just and on and on and on. This is a new version of DCS World, and it's been coming for quite a while. 1.5 and 2 are basically the same thing, but 2 supports the new format, which we'll get into. But basically, this is a new platform which supports multi-crew right out of the box. There's only one aircraft using it right now, the L-39, I think it is. But you can be in the cockpit and have somebody else in the other seat, and more developers are taking this on board. We're seeing this in FSX and X-Plane, shared cockpit stuff. It's kind of really critical in a combat environment. So the next aircraft I understand is picking that up is the Gazelle. You'll be able to have a weapons officer who is a real person sitting in wherever on their computer, and you're the pilot, and you can offload responsibility, which is very cool. VR support is built right in. You don't need to buy something like FlyInside with DCS World. You just go to the options and say, I have an Oculus Rift, and it just works. It's pretty cool. It is a modern platform designed from the ground up for modern hardware. And as it grows, it's got a lot of potential. The maps are incredibly detailed in DCS World. Orbex's FTX Global is what, 4 gig, 5 gig download? Nevada on its own in DCS World is 25 gigabytes, just for Nevada. So stunning levels of detail. An example of some of the study stuff, the Gazelle on the left there, just released about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And then top right, the Mirage N2000C, French fighter, more French stuff. And then bottom right, Razbam's upcoming Harrier, which will be the first combat sim that has a Harrier in it since the 90s, I think. DoveTail Games Flight School. There's their intro video right now. I'm going to be nice. No, seriously, DoveTail Games Flight School is, as I said, a gateway drug. It is an easy, curated, handheld introduction to flight. If you're just curious about using a flight sim, you go and look at FSX or Prepared, they're terribly scary. You need to get all these other add-ons and do all this other stuff, do this configuration, this tweaking. DoveTail Games Flight School is not like that. You simply download it, run it, and go. It teaches, obviously, the basics of flight, VFR, some IFR, and it has a simplified user interface. Under the hood, as I've covered in a video, it's built on FSX or Microsoft ESP underneath that. So it has a lot of commonality in this new interface with the old interface. You'll see things that you recognize. But ultimately, it's a more welcoming, more friendly interface. And along the welcoming line, this is very important. It's a curated marketplace for add-ons. If you have FSX and you want to get the PMDG 737, you go to a different website, you download it, you hope, you buy it, or download it, install it, unpack it, whatever, and hopefully it installs. It's a bit of a nightmare. The cool thing with Flight School and all of DoveTail's flight simulators, both of them being on Steam, is it's this curated marketplace. So a new simmer can say, I want to fly the Diamond DA42 and click on buy, and the next time they run the product, there it is. They don't have to do any configuration or tweaking. It's a gateway drug. It's very easy, it's very friendly, it prepares pilots for what to come. And in that respect, it is an amazing product, and it is something that we should value, even though most of the people in this room wouldn't really get much, I guess, benefit out of it other than refreshing some skills. It is a key to our community in terms of bringing people in. Similarly, IPAX, Aerofly FS2, along the same veins as Flight School, but a bit more fun, a bit more freeform. It's an entry-level or casual sim that has stunning visuals. It features training lessons just like Flight School, 21 of them. It also features 180 detailed airports. Interestingly, a lot of the detailed airports are in the same area covered by Pilot Edge. So interesting to see if Pilot Edge ever get on board with Aerofly. I think they might be talking to each other. More than a dozen built-in aircraft, from heavies to military and so on and so on. Early access at the moment has a pretty weak flight model in some places, but they are, as a development team, talking to people and listening to people and feeding that feedback back in, which is very cool. Keep an eye on Aerofly. It could be very good. It could be a lot of fun also for the experienced simmers. It's a great gliding sim. And Combat Air Patrol 2 launched this week. The I guess in name only, successor to the 1990s Combat Air Patrol. It is a combat and video game focused sim-like experience. So it's not a hardcore sim, it's sim-like. Again, it's that gateway drug thing getting people into sims. Features the ABAB Harrier, fully dynamic, open-ended campaign, which I didn't expect. And it is VR and track IR capable right now, from day one, which is awesome. Features 250,000 square kilometers of scenery as well, which shows all moves. Anyway, what's coming next? DoveTail's Flight Sim. We don't know very much about DoveTail's flight technology other than it is built on FSX, and we've seen that a little bit with Flight School. Flight School was something of a preview of Flight Sim. Shouldn't read too much into it, it's quite a way off from Flight Sim being delivered. 64-bit, they are partnering with numerous companies, including of course Orbex, to deliver the scenery. Not much more is known, but at the back on the left is the DoveTail team. Hold your hands up. DoveTail, Amy, there's Amy. There's a couple more of them here as well. I think Stephen Hood's here somewhere as well. Just grab them and ask them questions to see what they're willing to speak about. Next up, coming soon, Combat Helo. Who's heard about this? This thing is bonkers. This is an example of what one person can do when he's very, very bored for 5 years. It is a study-level Apache helicopter simulator developed by one guy. A guy called Richard Hawkins, sitting in his bedroom. I'm going to go do this. In the 90s and the 80s, we had a lot of these combat sims focused on one aircraft, from the likes of Microprotein, Apache Gunship, Jane's Apache Longbow, digital integrations, AH-64D, and so on and so on. He's bringing that back. He's developing this Apache sim. It is track IR and HOTAS capable. It has an advanced flight model using the same techniques as X-Plane. We are hoping it releases this year. We were hoping it released 2 years ago as well. Hopefully this year is the year. Keep an eye on that. And finally, watch this video. This is Red Bull Air Race from Slightly Mad Studios, the people that did Project Cars. Everything you are seeing in this video is in sim footage. Nothing here is pre-rendered. That's kind of important. So obviously it's a simulation of Red Bull Air Racing, which is timed laps around the circuit to see how you compete in high-performance aircraft, pulling off a lot of weird stunts and crazy maneuvers. It looks absolutely amazing. That team was very focused on visuals and sound with Project Cars. And they're following the same path with this. As I said, it went into beta 2 weeks ago. That's in sim. That's all in sim.
Oh my god.
Yeah. It would be neat if they was going into GA, but I don't think they will. I'll let that run a little bit longer because I know a lot of you haven't seen this. It's pretty cool though, right?
Wow.
Amazing. Anyway, I'm going to move on. So there's the 3 coming soons and the 3 that we're doing. Hardware. Getting to the end of the state of the simulation bit now. Hardware. Interestingly, the thing that's driving hardware for us in simulation are actually the space games, Elite Dangerous and Star Citizen. Because they're complicated, they are sim-like. So you have companies now stepping up, producing these incredible HOTAS systems, hands-on throttle on sticks, to fly spaceships. Once the novelty of flying a spaceship wears off, what are you going to do with your HOTAS? You're going to look at a flight sim. But obviously, key among those was Cytek's X55 previously, and now this blue thing, the X56, which is basically the X55 with the buttons moved slightly and changed a little bit, so that when you have a VR headset on, you can feel which button you're pressing. It makes sense, I guess. There are also some thumb mouse pointer type things, giving you more access to control for flying in a 6-axis environment like a spaceship. But we've seen investment from companies in mid-range or low-end hardware like that, but also significant investment in new hardware. Given the start of this presentation where I asked, is sim dead? Or they actually told me, the pundits, that simulation is dead. This is important. GoFlight, Iris Dynamics, Virtual Flight, and Thrustmaster all came out with or announced new mid to high-end products. Mid to high-end being these are expensive, $500 to $1,000 in one case, the Iris Dynamics one, $1,500 pieces of hardware for your home simulator. For a market that's dead, it's interesting to see that kind of investment, don't you think? And you can see up there on the top right, they are here, that's GoFlight's Vantage yoke, and they're showing that off today. And bottom right, I don't think they're here, unfortunately, Thrustmaster with their brand new rudder pedals. There's the X56. Oh, this is cool. On the top right, who's heard of Yoke Over Yoke in Virtual Flight? They then have the rudder pedals. I'll show you those in a bit. And this, a TQ6. And they also have a TQ3, so 6-axis throttles and a 3-axis throttle. Mid to high-end, expensive, but very, very high quality. Down the bottom left here, who's heard of Iris Dynamics? A few of you. Iris Dynamics came up with a Kickstarter for a control surface loading yoke. That's not force feedback, but it looks like it. So when you're flying, the faster you go, the heavier the aileron on the back of the aircraft, the elevator on the back of the aircraft is. A control surface loading yoke relays that to you. You try and pull it, and it's really heavy, whereas a minute ago it wasn't. That's very expensive. They actually didn't do a good job. When they launched on their Kickstarter a couple of years ago, they had quality issues, they had fulfillment issues, they had a lot of problems. They're back. They're completely back. They've changed their team around, they've changed their build process, they've changed the product around. The Iris Dynamics Dragonfly VR system is what it's now called. I have it. They sent it to me for review. It's pretty cool. So they're back. $1,500. They're not cheap. And there's Rudder with the rudder pedals. Best name ever. Okay, so in summary, my State of the Sim Nation. Told you it's not going to take 45 minutes. It's a pretty good year. It's been an amazing year. It's the year of Sim, which is something that I said in my presentation last year. That last year was the year of Sim. Well, it was. Now, this year is the year of Sim as well. It's a strong hobby to be in. I think it's growing and growing, and I welcome people like DoveTail and Aerofly and their new Sim into it. It's pretty damn cool and exciting.
Good evening, this is BelGeode, and I am here at the FlightSimCon dinner. It cost us 25 bucks, but as you can see, everybody is having an awesome time. We have some amazing food coming up, and of course there's a cash bar, so naturally a lot of us are getting our drink on. A lot of new friends being made. There were some prizes given out earlier. It's just been an absolutely incredible experience. And apparently, everyone seems to like my purple hat. Who knew? Who knew? So there's more yet to come. We've got day 2 coming up, so I'll be showing you a lot of what's going on then. But first, we gotta live through tonight, and honestly, I think drunken is on order for tonight. Alright, so this is BelGeode signing out, and we will be back. Ciao. This is FlightSimCon, the only place where you will find Elmo. We're all playing Cards Against Humanity. So Overwick's here. Jeff Favignano's here, Froogle's here, Amy's here from DoveTail. Eastern Hops guys are here, and Elmo. Elmo is in the building.
I still think we should go greet the arrivals.
This is amazing.
Right by baggage claim.
Oh my god. Wow. You can't make this shit up, folks. You just can't.
Who lost which bets?
What's that?
Who lost what bets?
Good morning, this is BelGeode, and we are back for day 2 of FlightSimCon here in Hartford, Connecticut. Admittedly, it's still early yet, but it does look like there's a little bit less people than we had yesterday. But be that as it may, right now the longest line is for the Oculus Rift. I had a chance to check that out yesterday. And let me tell you folks, it is absolutely incredible. The videos that we've all been putting up using it, you know, various YouTubers, it doesn't do it justice until you actually have this thing on your head. It is amazing. This is by far the most popular spot in FlightSimCon this weekend. It's basically a double whammy. I mean, you've got the Oculus Rift, which most of us have never used, so we're getting the chance to experience that. And traditionally, the Oculus Rift does not work very well with things like FSX. However, the program that is a real selling point here is FlyInside. And these developers have basically made it so that it can interact with FSX. And let me tell you folks, I had a chance to try this yesterday. It was phenomenal. The videos that we've all seen does not do this justice. You have to experience this thing for yourself. It is well worth it. There's been a line to use this thing since yesterday. And honestly, it's so worth it. Just for the 15 minutes of being in there and flying.
How realistic the lighting looks. Now,
What about the, there it is.
the way it turns.
So there's a couple things you can get there, but you don't have everything loaded right now just because it's kind of a learning curve for the hands.
That's real. Wow.
Yeah, you don't have to land.
Dad, if you take a turn, take a turn and look around the window. Oh wait, you're not. Yeah, you're not on the.
No, I'm not. I'm just.
But the sun and the shadows moving looks so realistic. It's just freaky. Yeah.
Tucked away in a small portion of FlightSimCon are a group of really cool guys that call themselves EasternHops.com. We're going to have a little chit-chat with them and see what they're all about and why they are, in my opinion, a very good thing for the flight sim community. So we're going to talk to them right now. So here we have the Eastern Ops booth, and this is Techie. Hey, Techie.
Hello, hello.
So tell me a little bit about Eastern Hops. What is it that you guys do? What do you represent?
Well, we are a flight sim community. We do a lot of group hops from airport to airport. We've got a lot of different events that we do throughout the week. We've got our biggest one is on Sundays, which are Cessna Sundays. Where pretty much everybody's in a Cessna C-172. And they're flying from airport to airport, and they go all over the world.
Oh wow!
You know, and it's an all-day event. You know, it starts I think it's 11 o'clock Eastern, and it runs all day long.
So now, is this something that's open to anyone to join, or
Absolutely anybody at all. Everybody's more than welcome to join us.
and how long has Eastern Ops been doing this?
The Cessna Sundays, we've been going, to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly. I know it's been at least a couple years now. We started doing it back when GameSpy was still around.
It's going back.
So it's been a good long while.
Right.
Eastern Hops itself has been around pretty much almost since the beginning of FSX. Our main guy, Pizza, who's behind me somewhere back there,
Yep.
is he kind of started it as a more friendly entry level concept for the group. Basically, he was getting in on servers, and there were guys running ATC, or guys just, didn't want to communicate right and whatnot. It wasn't real friendly to the beginning pilots, and so he kind of started doing his own thing, and it's grown from there. And
Right, it just all came together, huh?
hundreds of members strong now.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. So if they want to find you, where can they find you online?
Find us at easternhops.com. We're also on Facebook. All the information's on both the places. They can join us anytime they want.
Outstanding. Well, there you go. It's Eastern Hops. Let me just give you a quick rundown of everything that we've got here. Of course, we've got the FlyInside folks that are also showing that off with the Oculus Rift. We've got Quality Wings here. As we move further down, we've got the guys from Go Flight Technologies. Got Apropel. We even have Vaughn College. And of course, if you're familiar with Active Sky Next, these are the guys behind that. This is Hi-Fi Technologies. And they've been showcasing Active Sky 16 plus Cloud Art, which is coming soon. And one of my favorite stores, Aerosoft. I told them I completely hate their store because it's responsible for me losing most of my paycheck every other week.
It's not the store so much. It's mainly the...
There's Volair Sim. Sim Innovations. Air Manager. FSFX package. That's all your virtual effects. Brake dust, vapor trails. Javiator, they're making custom cockpits. Radio instruments, we'll take a look at that. The folks from flightplan.com. And as you can see, it does work on tablets. And then on the other side, we've got Jetline Systems, currently being interviewed by Air Daily X. Very popular, very good news show. You can check them out on the net. And there's Scott Gentile. Of course, he is the CEO of A2A, so all those lovely A2A planes. And he did announce this weekend that the Lockheed Constellation was going to be their next project. So you can expect to see that soon as well. And then there's the boys from the Boston Virtual ARTCC. Got a chance to hang out with them last night. Really good group of folks. And this is all live here. This is all live ATC going on and other people flying. Real time, folks, real time. And of course, I showed you the Commodore 64 setup yesterday. This is another darling of the show. And yes, folks, that's exactly what you think it is. That is a Cessna Skyhawk turned into a simulator. And we come back around this way, we still have some more of the Boston Virtual guys. As you can see, some of them are flying, some of them are controlling. So that's the main display. A lot of stuff going on here, and of course we're surrounded by all of these beautiful aircraft. Pretty much it's an aviation geek's paradise right here at FlightSimCon.
Over the course of the weekend, there were a lot of panels, and I certainly didn't have time to catch them all with everything that I had to take in. But one of the most important ones that I could not afford to miss was the very last panel of the convention, which was DoveTail Games and the future of flight simulation.
Thank you very much for coming along. I know it's been a busy 2 days. This is the final presentation by my good self. What I want to do in this presentation this afternoon is really open up and talk about what we at DoveTail Games are doing with flight simulation. I'm not a producer, I'm not a business guy, I'm a creative director, so I'm a designer. I'm the guy that makes the day-to-day choices on what goes in, what goes out and why. So if you don't like something, typically I'm the one that gets the blame. And if you do like something, I try and take the credit as quickly as possible. But what I don't want to do is kind of go through stats and features and all sorts of things in a great level of detail. I want to try and give you the reasoning why I've been doing stuff the way I have so far, because it paints a picture as to what I want to do in the future. I'm a new guy to this world. There's a lot of experienced people in here, there's a lot of experienced presenters, and I've been in the world of aviation and flight sim for only 18 months. So I am the new kid. And I feel like I've been given the keys to the kingdom in the sense that what I do today will affect how we enjoy flight simulation in the future. And if I get it terribly wrong, everybody else will just run off to our competitors. So I feel as though the weight of expectation is on my shoulders, and it's a great challenge, and one that I am immensely proud to be involved in. So I want to begin with the background. So there I was. It's July 2014. I wasn't in flight sim. I wasn't in aviation. I'd never been in an aircraft, or I like aircraft certainly. I was working at a different software developer, one that had been making a number of sports racing simulations for a number of years on console and PC. So I have been in the video game industry for a long time, nearly 20 years now. And I know that space very well. I feel very comfortable there. I was on a business trip in the US with the company's CEO, and we were discussing what we could do for the company in the future. Did we just want to stay in racing? Did we want to branch out and do something else? And if we did, where could we go? Where could we be competitive? And one of the things I've always wanted to get involved in was flight simulation, especially from a development perspective, because my job and my role means that it's immensely enjoyable to get stuck into a new challenge and try and solve it. And I was proposing at the time that maybe we start to move into flight sim, because I think whilst there were a few key players in that space, there was room for somebody else to come in. About the time I was putting that pitch together for the company, another software development studio, DoveTail Games, made an announcement that they had done a deal with Microsoft to publish Steam Edition, and that they would go on in the future to create their own flight sim. So I felt as though I had the rug pulled beneath my feet all of a sudden. I didn't want to go up against DoveTail Games. They'd already stolen the march on us, and we couldn't start from scratch. So what I did that evening was message one of the guys at DoveTail who I'd worked with previously and said, you know, through gritted teeth, congratulations, you've got the deal with Microsoft. I was looking at that myself, well done. You know, kind of pat them on the back, but at the same time I was immensely gutted. He came back to me and said, well, we're looking for somebody to start this project for us. Would you be interested? Funnily enough, I was interested. But I tried to play it very cool. So I replied and said, yes, I have thought about it. And yes, I would be interested in talking. One thing led to another, and the guys invited me to come down to DoveTail Games, a different part of the UK from where I was living and working, and meet the management team and basically be grilled about why would you want to make a flight simulation, what would you do in the future, what do you think of our ideas thus far? And I just tried to be open and honest and said, you know, I'm not a pilot, I haven't been in the space before, but I do want to understand it, and the way that I go about trying to appreciate what's important, what's magic, is to kind of put myself in the user's shoes. So I don't know quite how I managed it, but I convinced them to give me a job, and I accepted, and I moved us, my family at the time, to a different part of the UK to start working on this. This was a big deal for me, it still is. When I'd accepted that position, I started to look at what the community and what the world around flight sim were discussing and talking about. I wanted to understand this group of people that are sitting here today. Because if I can't understand you and know where you want to go, then I've got no hope of making this a success. So I started looking at forums and discussions. And I started in particular looking at what people had said about the DoveTail announcement and the Microsoft deal. And they were very direct. This needs to move things forwards. If they don't update X or add X, then I'm out. You know, people were making snap judgments straight away. I think there'd been a great deal of expectation as to what somebody new in the space would be doing, and people wanted everything day one. That's understandable, I see that everywhere I go. So I thought, okay, there's a very vocal community. You can't do anything cheaply with these guys, nor would we want to. They are going to be honest from day one. That's fine. What about the people outside this immediate community? What are they saying? These people would typically say, I used to love flight sims, they should make them again. Which is strange to me, because there are a number of flight simulators out there. There was FSX, there was FSX Steam Edition, there was Competitive Product A and Competitive Product B and Competitive Product C. What bothered me though was that people outside this immediate community would look at flight sims as something that people used to enjoy years previously, which is completely wrong. And I didn't understand the reason for that, and I started digging into it. The way I see it is the wider audience, who you could say on the far end of the extreme, the gamer or the video gamer, are just too caught up in the world that's put in front of them day in, day out. You know, you can say the people that are playing Call of Duty or even iRacing or whatever. You know, the stuff that I used to make a long time ago. And that was disappointing for me, because I have always felt as though flight simulation is an amazing subject that I wish more people could get involved with. And I'm not talking about trying to get the Call of Duty player automatically into suddenly enjoying flight simulation, because I think it would be detrimental to something that you'll love if I tried to twist it and turn it into a video game. That's not what I want to do. What I want to try and do is understand where the magic is, so that I can hook the right kind of person to come into this space. So I'm not trying to change something, I'm trying to understand the magic. I looked at, you know, how do I quickly understand this world so that I know which pieces I've got to play with. You know, if I wanted to make a sports game, I could look at the rule book and say, I know I need X, Y, Z in there, and I've got those components to play with in order to make a compelling, engaging experience. But there is no aviation playbook. This was almost my barrier to quickly understanding what have I got to play with in this world. So I invested a lot of time in trying to read various pilot operating handbooks, flight training manuals, you name it. There's so much stuff out there that I'm sure you guys know more than me, in the sense of you will never stop learning and reading. There's always something to hoover up. And I always want to try and understand as much as possible, because you don't know where that next great idea comes from. It could be from the tiniest tiny comment that you might see on a forum or in a book that you've been studying for ages that has put you to sleep, and there was just one great thing in there that made it all connect. And I'm scared of flying. The fact is, I've always wanted to make a flight sim, but I'm really scared of going in an aircraft or a light aircraft. So I've travelled around the world, I've been on airliners all the time, I can kind of live with that. I've done a lot of motorsport stuff. I've been in very fast cars, I've been in some accidents. I can live with that. But stick me in a light aircraft and I am in a completely different world and very uncomfortable with that. I didn't admit this when I was actually having my interview at DoveTail. You know, you just try to talk about the best bits, not the negative. But I thought maybe I could overcome that at some point. So when I looked at what the community were talking about, what the wider gamer, whom I might be able to pick and choose some people to bring into this world, how quickly I could understand the world of aviation to be effective, and my fear of flying, I thought the challenge was immense. But at this point, I'd already committed to moving and sold the dream to my family. And we moved to DoveTail. So I set about trying to read as much as possible, appreciating that I was the new kid and I had to start from the first page. And I found the whole thing immensely daunting, if I'm honest. This is such a big world and there's so much to continually learn that I can't ever hope to get completely ahead of the curve. But I'm okay with that. I can live with the fact that I will always keep learning. And actually, that might be one of the strengths and attractions to this kind of world. You won't know everything day one. So then it was go in a light aircraft. And fortunately at DoveTail, we live in a part of the UK where very nearby there's a small classic grass strip airfield. And the community there, and as I've found everywhere actually, the community there was very receptive to what we're doing and more than happy to show us the aircraft, let us try stuff out. And to my major fortune, one of the key guys at DoveTail is actually a pilot. And he took us up in an aircraft. He introduced me to this world, and it is very, very different. So I could pick any of you up probably and put you in a different motor vehicle. But if I take somebody out of this community, or outside of this community, and try to put them in an aircraft, they're completely lost. So this is a challenge for me as a designer. I want to try and bring some new people into this space without changing what it is, but I need to understand this alien world that's put in front of me. And an aircraft cockpit, a classic one, the steam gauges, is something that is very different for the wider gamer. So if I want to try and find the right people that will find flight simulation to be a passion, I've got to try and explain this world to them. And at the same time, I had to try and learn a lot. So I started playing. I started to try and get myself into enjoying flight simulation again and appreciating the finer details. And what I found was, as it starts to click, when I was reading all the manuals and trying to understand this world in a community and appreciating the depth that was on offer, trying to employ that and put that back into FSX just made the experience so much more enjoyable. Where a lot of people, I think, would pick up FSX Steam Edition and then just try to fly it. They typically go for the big airliner and just try to fly around. They've got no idea what they're doing. And that, for me, missed the point. The point was to appreciate a part of this world and then try to expand your knowledge with the experience that you have in the flight simulation. So I started to get the theoretical idea of what it meant to fly an aircraft. But I had to do the practical, which means overcoming my fear. So it's back to the airport, it's to the flight school, and it's for a flying lesson. Which sounded great on paper, I love the theory. The guy sat me down, he had a little plane on a plastic stick and he was telling me about all the controls. And I said, I know this stuff. I've been reading the manuals, I know all the theory, I can kind of live with this. The difference is actually putting you in the cockpit and flying the aircraft. You know, the theory is something that anybody can read up on, but I found the biggest challenge for me was actually being in the cockpit and overcoming my fear so that I could translate what I knew into the control of the aircraft. That was more awkward. It didn't help that my girlfriend came along and she sat in the back with her phone and took pictures. But I did go flying, and it did feel amazing. And I did get back down again, and I felt very happy. And that's just a backpack or a rucksack in the back. It wasn't a parachute. I don't think they would have let me go up if it was a parachute. This guy's not confident. So what I tried to do was feed back what I was learning and experiencing into what we were working on. So we had the FSX code and we had the flight code, and we were trying to understand what we would do with this. I mean, there were immediate things that we wanted to tidy up. There was new technology that we wanted to integrate into the engine. You know, it is a 10-year-old product and it does need updating. But the fundamentals were there. So I tried to feed back that experience of starting out, because we knew that the first product that we did put out would be not so much for the existing community. We thought everybody would take a look at it, but we were going to start small. And I thought it's sensible to start with light aviation and work your way through the different categories of aviation. And I thought your pilot training was incredibly important. So instead of trying to treat it like a game, all I was trying to do was say, you head in this direction and you start here as a student. So we were busy working away. We were integrating new technology into the airports and understanding the world editor. We were playing around with the user interface, and that's something I always try to do everywhere I go, is rework that. And the little app window and the confusing control of FSX was something I thought needed updating. Some people in the company were saying that's going to be very expensive, we shouldn't do that. But I thought what we did today was important to set us up appropriately for the future. So we kind of rounded on these things and we agreed what we'd want to do. It did mean that we took some steps back in some areas. For example, the flight planner is really VFR only and basic one at that. But preparing those foundations for the future was what we needed to do for flight school. And I was prepared to take a bit of a flak if it meant that in the long term, we'd create a better product. So we were integrating new technology. This is a work in progress shot when we were making the Cherokee at the time and updating Prescott Airport, KPRC. And people talk about lots of technologies that they want to put into the sim. So the buzzwords that I always heard when I joined was, are you going to make it 64-bit? Is it going to be DX11 or 12, which has its own problems? Are you going to have PBR, so you've got physically based rendering? Are you going to have SSAO, so you've got ambient occlusion? Well, yes, we do, and we put all of those things into flight school, which is already out there. Now, as you might have heard Amy talking about earlier, it's not really so much about the technology that you put in now, it's what people can do with it in the future that's really important. So flight school doesn't necessarily showcase all of this stuff to the greatest possible extent, but I think the future content that is going to be built for flight sim will harness that. And it was incredibly important for us to get the foundations there so that people could start creating that. And we're having conversations with people about creating content all the time. You know, we know we can't beat this ourselves, so we went to the likes of Alabama, and this is an early shot when we were working the DA42 with them. We appreciated that it was important to try and simplify things in terms of UI navigation, so you don't just pick your aircraft off a picker, but you do have a hangar. And we'll make that hangar interactive at some point. We did care about you recognising the logo for the aircraft. We care about the registration of the aircraft, your flying hours in total, your flying hours on that aircraft, that flying hours on that type. And we also planned for the future in terms of how you would integrate these types of aircraft all the way up to airliners. So flight school really scratches the surface, and it was designed to bring a few new people into the space, try the technology, prepare the foundations, but also introduce a new audience to right, I start as a student and then I could get my PPL, or if I want to take a step before that, in the UK flight school, I could get my light aircraft pilot license, my LAPL. I wanted that structure day one because I intend to capitalise on it in the future. So you'll be logging flight hours in flight school, and those flight hours are currency for something that we'll have in the future. So there's lots of pilots, and you'll see discussions and people say, I've got 10,000 hours, but it was an airline, or I've got 200 hours and it was my own PA-28. That's great, and I want to get into that space. That's important for simulation. That recognition of what you're doing, if you're traveling from A to B and you do it in, you know, terrible conditions or at night and whatnot, I want to recognize that, and it becomes part of your logbook and your profile. So instead of you just doing this immense flight and then turning around and realizing nobody's recognized that, I want the simulation to record this and for it to become useful for you in the future, not just in the sim, but other communication channels outside of that. I want you to be recognized for your achievements. So very recently we put out Flight School. This was our first kind of work on the technology, if you like, and an extension of what FSX was many, many years ago. And we put this early product out for a number of reasons. As I mentioned, it was to bring new people into this space, but it was also to engage with third parties in the community. So we do know that we can't do this on our own. We do need you guys and your support to create something that is special. I mean, so many people have come to me and said, well, there have been loads of flight simulations around for years. Why can't you just put all the best features in your new sim and it will be the ultimate expression of what flight simulation could be? That doesn't happen overnight. We wanted to refine the foundations ahead of Flight Simulator, put the new technologies in, ambient occlusion, light scattering, work with people like Orbex to update the default scenery, include aircraft from the likes of Alabao. Lessons and missions are from Take Flight. They're an ex-ACES development team. So we're trying to reconnect with all these people and appreciate that together we are much stronger. So we put all these things in there. We're updating the airspace for the entire world. There's regional aviation updates for airports and whatnot, so it's not 10 years out of date. We're going to update all of those things. It is costly for us, but there's a great belief that it's important to have a modern, current sim. And we packaged all this up and we put it out for $15. It's not an experiment on our part. This is just the first step on where we want to go over time. It's not meant to be the all singing, all dancing flight sim that you want to see. That is coming, and we'll talk about that more and more. So we put Flight School out, and then inevitably, people start talking about it on the internet. And I typically say people tend to be loud on the internet, but that is entirely okay with me. So if you sit somebody down with me and they've got a compliment about Flight School, or they want to diss it in some way and tell me that we've ruined their dream, I'm fine with that. And they'll tend to articulate in a bit more detail if I'm one-to-one with them in the real world, rather than the comments that are thrown around on the internet. Because people don't have a voice necessarily on a forum, they tend to be very direct and very loud. That's okay, primarily because I know where we're going with this. This isn't something that we do overnight. There is a long-term plan. So the feedback typically revolved around very extremes like this. The graphics suck and you only get 3 planes. You know, that's a very honest opinion. It's not one in a great level of detail. And the compliments would revolve around, it's great work, I can't wait for the full sim. Fine. And you'll find this to and froing on the internet now, where some people will say, well, it's not for me, I wanted something far bigger than this. It's okay, this is Flight School. And others who will see what we're doing and say, they're on the right track, if they can do this, this, and this, it could be really good. That's great. I think both opinions are entirely valid, and there's pluses and minuses that I can get from all of the feedback that I see. And I do try to read all of it. I don't just look for the good bits and kind of print that out and put it up on a wall and say, look, everybody loves our work. The negative stuff, in my mind, is actually really useful, because I have an idea of where I want to take this flight sim and what we need to do and where we are deficient. And sometimes the feedback, even the negative stuff, arms me with what I need in order to try and champion the cause for extending Flight Simulator. So if you think back to the community, they're going to be very direct. They do have a lot of choice out there. And the wider gamer, they didn't know flight sims existed previously. So I've got a bunch of buddies who are in this industry, I've been in it for a long time, and I would always kind of say, my new game's out, why don't you go play it? Nobody really did, which meant that I was probably not that good or they weren't interested. But loads of them are now playing Flight School. And I say playing because I don't think they've gone through all the license types yet and achieved what I would class as their kind of wings. So this is a screenshot of an image that a guy sent me, one of my buddies who we'll call Paul because that's his real name. He's sitting there in the evening, not playing Call of Duty. He's not playing something on his Xbox or his PlayStation. He's dragged his Mac downstairs, running boot camp so he can get this working, and he's enjoying Flight School. And he's bombarding me with videos and pictures and questions about the experience of flying an aircraft for the first time. Now, he owned FSX years ago. I owned FSX a long time ago as well. But he never got anything out of that. He walked away from it. And I think that's a disappointment, and he's missing out on something that could be really fulfilling. But he's engaging in Flight School now because we've made a bit of a noise about it. He might go and try other stuff. You know, he's quite happy to fly his Super Cub around at night, which is probably not ideal, out of major airports. This is what people do. They don't know about the kind of local airstrip near them. I didn't know about the EGTO, the Rochester Airfield, near my place of work because I drive past it all the time and I don't know it's there. The wider community doesn't appreciate this. They see a plane in the sky and they go, oh, that's cool. They don't have any idea of where it's come from or where it's going. That concept doesn't go through their mind. And when we start to unlock this, I think that's when they get to see the beauty of flight simulation and aviation. So he's in there and engaging with that. That's great. Now, is he my primary focus? No, he's not. You know, I need to make him a flight simmer because ultimately that's where I'm going to be successful and the company I work for is going to be successful. Now, this isn't really, for me personally, about money. Unfortunately, every time somebody buys something from Flight School, purchases Flight School, I don't get a cut of that. I just get a salary. But I know that I will keep doing well in my job if I can make money for the business and give you guys what you want. So he's flying around in his Super Cub at the moment. He's barely touched the Cherokee that we have in there, and he's played through a few of the lessons. He hasn't got his light aircraft pilot license, or he hasn't got his PPL. So he's scratching the surface, but he's flying around the 24,000 airports in free flight and just going on a jolly all the time. And I'll get a message from him every morning, I've done this, that and the other, that's great. So what comes soon is the DA42. So the technology that we're incorporating in this, ultimately I think will make the simulation and the engine look smarter and smarter and smarter. Now graphics aren't everything. I come from a video game world where we try to dazzle people with graphics and then you find out actually there's not that much in there. Flight simulation I think has to be the other way around. But there's no reason this stuff can't look amazing. It does in the real world, and we've incorporated technology in there to take advantage of that in Flight School and Flight Sim going forwards. What's really important, I think, is where we go next. And I think it's pretty obvious that as I started Flight School with the concept of you being a student and logging hours and getting recognition for your flights, that's something I want to continue with in the future. I didn't want to go too wide day one and give you a bit of everything. I just wanted to try and compartmentalise the experience and say, you start as a student and you get a licence. It's as simple as that. I'm not in a great level of detail. I mean, you guys will probably know a lot more about what's on offer in Flight School at the moment, but I want to build towards something that's much bigger. So you would go through your PPL, you'll get your commercial pilot's licence, and I want you to go up to ATPL. But I don't just want to stick the content in there and say, go off, enjoy it in free flight. I want to give you something for it. It doesn't have to be massively complex, but I want there to be the recognition. So if I introduce a new aircraft into Flight Sim in the future, and you haven't flown that category of aircraft before, maybe you do some transition training, and you just understand the fundamentals about operating the aircraft. And you can choose to ignore it if you want. If you purchase something to go off in free flight, that's fine. I'm never going to put a gate there for you, but I'm going to give you a reward and recognise your achievements. So, for example, in flight school, if you hadn't done the multi-engine training that comes with the DA-42, and you go off and enjoy it in free flight, you will be recording your hours for the flight, but you don't actually log them on your profile or your logbook until you've got the multi-engine training out of the way. Successfully, I might add. So, I'm trying to give you a picture of where I've come from. I've learned that I did make the right decision way back when I decided to jump out of my world and into flight sim. Because this is just so overwhelmingly amazing for me, this world of flying aircraft, that I've got to the point now where I'm completely fine with flying. I want to get my PPL. I'm trying to gently encourage the company to pay for that rather than me invest in it myself, because it's very expensive. And if flight school does okay, maybe they will, I don't know. But I want to get my license and I want to get on this road now. I am absolutely committed to trying to make this a success, and it's going to be a success if you guys really buy into what I'm doing. I'm not going to make it a video game. I do want to make a more authentic, realistic flight simulation, and I do want to call on the talents of people to help us make that happen. We're going to continue down that path of providing greater recognition. I will slowly get towards the ATPL and the airliners. I just don't want to do that overnight. I want to capitalise on what we have got. And I do want us to create better tools and engage with the third party and the community in general to get great content. You know, we can create some of the stuff ourselves, but really we're not the experts in every single area. We can never be. Thank you very much. That's me outlining my background on flight simulation and what I wish to do tomorrow.
And just like that, FlightSimCon 2016 was over, and we all headed back to the hotel. It was time for long goodbyes. Flight Sim guy had already left in the morning on Sunday, so he really didn't get a chance to see anything that happened during the day. Froogle left shortly after the festivities had wrapped up, so pretty much it was just Novawing 24 and myself closing the entire thing. So what did we do? Went back to our favorite hangout, Cloud9 Lounge, and my girlfriend, April, behind the bar. So we partied to the wee hours of the night with the gentlemen from Orbix and Aerosoft, and let me tell you, those guys can drink. Oh my god. I had decided to spend the extra day at the hotel, so I got to admire the view from our room one more night. It was, quite frankly, one of the best hotels that I've stayed at in a long time. And granted, it's not often that I get to travel. We collected a whole bunch of swag from pretty much all of the exhibitors there. Nothing really much to write home about, but right now I am using that Sim Market mug for my coffee, just so you're aware. And I will be using the Eastern Hop Shot glass too. So Monday afternoon came around and it was finally time to say goodbye. Novawing and I were the last YouTubers in the place. So we promised that we would get together and do some joint flights, so you can expect that in the future. And then it was last call for me. Time to head to the airport and make my way back home to Pittsburgh, PA. So with one more blue moon, I called it quits on FlightSimCon 2016.
So it's come to this, as we're taxiing on to runway 33 at Kilo Bravo Delta Lima. It's time to say goodbye to FlightSimCon 2016. It's been an absolutely gorgeous time. Met a lot of new friends. I had a lot of fun with all of you, and I can't wait to do it again next year. So thank you as always for watching. If you've liked this video, feel free to give me a like. And as we go brakes down, throttles up, say goodbye to Bradley International Airport. Next stop, home sweet home. Thank you for watching. Ciao.